Okay, I'm
We can cut off the top.
ready. Welcome to historic. Oh, I've blown it already. Let's try
Let-
a
Let's
start over.
start over.
What? Welcome to Historical Accuracy, where we offer listeners a chance to expand their definition of what it means to be a woman by spotlighting a new historical figure each week, and likely sharing a laugh or two because learning doesn't always have to be so damn serious.
No, it does not.
Oh,
And
I'm I'm Noelle.
I'm Holly.
This podcast is great for anyone interested in the history of women, but it's also a great resource for writers looking to create dynamic female characters.
Yes, loads of ideas for you.
Our historical pick of the week is, drum roll, nah, Isabella. For those who are listening, that was Holly doing a mad drum roll. Okay, and probably the goofiness of this morning is inspired by our selection, Isabella Stewart Gardner, born in 1840, died in 1924. She was born in New York City into a wealthy merchant family, educated at a private school until her family moved to Paris, where she attended a school for American girls. Didn't Tom Petty write a song? No. One of her classmates, Julia Gardner, was a member of an affluent Boston family.
Mm.
Bella returned to the United States in 1858. Julia introduced her to her brother Jack. Romance in Jack. They were married in 1860 in Boston. You just got to say Boston.
Oh, bastard.
I apologize to my Bostoners, but anyway. So she married in 1860. In 1863, she had a baby boy and named him after her husband Jack, called him Jackie. But sadly, Jackie developed pneumonia and died 3 months before his second birthday. A year later, she miscarried, and not long after that, her friend and her sister-in-law, Julia, passed away. That's a
Oh,
trifecta of grief.
yeah.
So, needless to say, she became very ill, and in 1867, doctors advised Jack to take Isabella abroad to lift her spirits. She was so sick that when they boarded the ship to cross the Atlantic, she was carried on board on a stretcher.
Mm,
That's pretty ill.
it is.
So, she started working through her grief and began keeping detailed diaries and scrapbooks about her journeys. They traveled through Europe and Asia, began collecting fine art. Isabella began, when they would come back between trips, she started rejoining Boston society and developed a reputation for being the life of the party. We'll get back to that in we'll do that. So they had collected so much art, they decided to build a museum. Okay, the house is busting at the seams, so let's just build out.
Why not?
Why not? But Jack died of a stroke in 1898. But did that stop Isabella?
Mhm.
No. She continued with the dream of building a museum. Construction started in 1899 and completed in 1901. And she didn't just build a museum, she built the fourth floor of that museum became her living quarters so she could spend her time overseeing the galleries. Boston's cultural hub was the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. When she died in 1924, she left all of her money to the museum. However, there were very strict stipulations. Nothing could be rearranged or removed,
Mm-mm.
added or sold from her collection. The museum was to stay hers.
Thanks.
Let's talk about Isabella.
Oh my God, I'm in love with Isabella.
tell me what you found in their notes. They're just fabulous notes you have.
Yeah, I found some really fun stuff about her, and I just have to say, I feel like she's our spirit animal. I might do this every single week. There's never enough time to research these people. I'm like, damn it, I could spend a lifetime. But yeah, I do. I feel like she's one of us artisties, but she was born into like that whole rich society thing, and as a woman at that time, her options were clearly she didn't care because there's this one story that she was prone to getting in trouble and snuck out to go to the circus and
When
had to get
she was,
dragged back.
and that was before she even moved to Paris.
Yeah. So I mean, if
Wow.
you're escaping to the circus, I'm sorry, you've got an artist spirit. That's what's going on there. You're longing for your weirdos. You're looking for your fellow. Where are my fellow weirdos? I need them. Um,
Let's go to
please.
the circus. There's some weirdos. Okay.
Oh my God. Yeah. And the servants of her household had to drag her back and like with her kicking and screaming and crying.
Oh,
She probably wanted to run away with the circus people. I get it. Um, but yeah, so she was a total eccentric. I keep picturing almost Iris Baffnell in my head too, just
oh
doing her
yeah.
own, you know, she smoked cigarettes, and the newspaper ran stories claiming that she had once taken a zoo lion for a stroll in the park.
Right. Right. She also reminds me of Auntie Mame.
Yeah.
That wild character. Life's a banquet, and those poor bastards are starving to death.
Yeah, she took grief, which obviously she suffered a lot of, and then spun it on its head as an adult and just dove into, I feel like mothering artists. I'm just guessing that. That's just conjecture on my part, but I'm reading between the lines. Um, yeah, it says she also once shocked all of Boston society by showing up to the Boston Symphony Orchestra wearing a headband that declared, "Oh, you Red Sox." Which, if you
But
look at that history,
she's got the artist aspect, and then I mean, the symphony and the sports. I mean, they just talk about two things that don't gel.
yeah. And in that time, everyone was so proper in how they dressed, and like there were rules. She clearly liked to break them. She also, I love this one. She hosted a boxing match at her home, and while the men fought, she danced because that's, I just picture her
Ah,
floating around.
yeah.
She had two large diamonds apparently attached to wires and wore them bouncing on her. We could call her the founder of those silly ass headband things.
All right. The
And at the
rules.
opening of her museum, she served champagne and donuts.
What?
Yeah,
Hey,
it says she
all
courted the world and the world courted her. Um, but yeah, and she loved collecting the scandal sheets about her and apparently had a sense of humor about it. She was quoted as saying, "Don't spoil a good story by telling the truth."
wow.
Um, and she also, as well as collecting scandal sheets and art, she also collected artist friends, mostly men, and gay friends. She was the original, you know, beard. Is that, wait, what do they call it?
That's the nice way. The nice thing that we had other derogatory terms that we
Yeah,
will
we
not.
don't like that one. Um, but yeah, some one of the authors that wrote a book about her, which I'll tell you about later, offered an explanation for maybe why Isabella collected men, like she collected art. And she said she thought it was to enjoy a wider world because
Hmm.
uh, women needed links to men who were conversant with that world. Like, in order to have access to, she found loopholes basically.
So she wanted to experience the world on a bigger level. So she had that. Um, she was, well, flamboyant and experienced
Hmm.
people from
Yep.
all the cultures. I like the part where she, after a f- she invited the Harvard football team to her home after they beat Yale, and that to me is like, someone who is that high society. Of course, there's the rivalry between Harvard and Yale football is huge. But then, to bring the football team,
Mhm.
yeah, that's as eccentric as you get. So, who was the designer you mentioned?
Designer, or you mean the author?
Yeah,
Benjamin?
the
Benjamin?
one with the big glasses.
Oh, Iris Afnell.
Iris Apfel. She was a designer, wasn't she?
Yeah. No, she was a collector of design. Um, yeah,
Clear.
she had the largest collection of like costume jewelry, I think,
Oh,
anywhere. She was,
maybe we'll do an episode on Isabel. See, I can't even say her name.
oh my
Please,
God, I love her so much. Yeah, we will have to do that. They
thank you.
also, here's the interesting thing for all you writers out there that are listening to, she was a storyteller. Um, some of them are saying that like her collection of art that she brought back and all that stuff, it wasn't just what she collected, it was the way she then presented it. Apparently, every room had a theme, but that if you go into those rooms, you might not understand the theme. But there was a lot of mishmashing and blending of things. They suspect highly on purpose, like that she knows the story. And that's why she didn't want anything. She wanted everything, like you said, left exactly. Her museum is still to this day exactly as she detailed it, even down to like she had a wish that her birthday is always celebrated every year inside the Episcopalian church that's inside her house.
Wait,
'Cause,
so
hmm,
in the museum, there's an Episcopalian church?
yeah. Well,
Oh,
back in the day, those big estates, they had little, they had like a little chapel inside sometimes and all that kind of.
yeah,
So,
carried over from England, Scotland, where
yeah, it sounds very
houses. Yeah,
aristocratic sort of, you know, life. But I don't, I just loved the way she lived. She just let it full out, just did whatever the heck she wanted to, it sounds like,
wow.
and enjoyed. But but they say that she did carefully, like her life was almost a performance to the point where she burned most of her journal. She wanted whatever she presented, but then she was also private in a certain kind of way. Um,
So she did all of these journals, but we don't get to see any of her experience.
no, but you can, just so everyone knows, you can go to her museum, which is in Fenway Park in Boston, was her house that
Wait,
became
is it in Fenway Park or near Fenway Park?
near
Here. Okay.
near Fenway Park. There's actual, we'll put it in the links. There's an Instagram. You could follow the museum if you're, geeking out and want to know more. There's also a lot of the fun facts I just gave you are from a article that we'll put the link to in Vice that was written by Liz Lenz about her. It's a great article. I highly recommend. There's also, we didn't even talk about it because, frankly, it's not, to me, it's not about her life. It was after she died. She sort of became more and more famous, and the spotlight put upon her in her museum because her museum was the victim of the biggest art heist in history.
I love that documentary.
Oh, you know the one? It's on Netflix.
Oh,
It's called
well,
This is a Robbery, the world's biggest art heist.
oh, that's heartbreaking.
That's her museum. That was her art that they stole.
Oh my God.
Um,
I feel like
so
I have a whole new collect connection
yeah,
to
that's her. That was her art. That was her. And she didn't want anything moved. So somewhere she is haunting the shit out of them. Um,
well, and really that documentary is extremely well done. And so props to Netflix because there's a lot of speculation and storytelling on the potential thieves
mhm.
that I even found fascinating, especially because of how much, like you said, that haunting might be actually happening.
I,
But one of the things that just, if I may change, get back into Isabella and uh, because it talks about this in the tarot card, and her card is the Four of Pentacles, and it's about, control. But to me, because I've worked with museums, I've worked in museums, I've worked with
Mhm.
art, I've worked in the art world, that for her to have all that money and for her to want to tell her stories, in a certain way in every
Mhm.
room, and the guards have to direct you, and this is the order and stuff like that. I think it's because any curator of a museum of
Mhm.
artwork is going to come in with their vision. It's like getting a
Yeah.
film or getting a new editor on a story. They're going to take it and make it theirs. So
Mhm.
she didn't want that. She wanted her story to live on through the museum, and I respect that.
Mhm.
So I have a little bit of I mean, I just props, and you go girl, raise the roof on living your life out loud, and then leaving it in his leaving your legacy in history, but knowing, being smart enough to know what people will do to alter that story.
Mhm.
Didn't leave those kinds of restrictions. It's like, here's all my money, but you're going to take good care of it. I love.
Yeah, and yeah, to because it seems she really appreciated art deeply and artists, and yeah, used all her resources to make sure that people both had access to it and then to enjoy it herself. She gave herself access, but she shared. And she was a storyteller, like you said. Some could say control freak. Um, I say no. I think she was telling a story. And she wanted that story intact. They did find a loophole around her stipulation. They
Where?
just built a whole nother edition. So so they still haven't changed a hair on its head, so to speak, but they made more to go with it.
But there's always a way to expand on a really good idea.
Yeah, so I think that's cool. I'm good for solutions of that nature. And to wrap up this part of the journey, I would just say for all you writers out there, for resource materials, there's many books written about her. The one Patricia Bidgerman, I hope I said that right, wrote The Memory Palace of Isabella Stewart Gardner. There's also one called Mrs. Jack, by Louise Tharp Hall. And then there's one called The Art of the Scandal, The Life and Times of Isabella Stewart Gardner, which was by Douglas Shand Tucci. Tucci, love Tucci.
Mm.
But here's the thing, writers. I can't see, and there's obviously that documentary about the heist, but again, it was more about the heist and not really about her.
And
Um,
the artwork that she had there was, a seminal work, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but I can see it. Of course, I can't tell you, but ooh,
mhm.
let the mystery drive you to go see the Netflix.
Exactly. So there's all this great research. There's tons of research out there about her. But as
Mhm.
far as my research took me, I see no narrative movies about her life, like, based on kind of thing. So
Mm.
there's space for a movie that's about her, not the heist, because she, in and of herself, a woman living in the early 1800s like that in high society who was a total eccentric. I mean, who that's a whole series that would be a blast to watch.
Well,
Um,
the the story structure, going from being a privileged child who could even escape, and then going to school for American girls in Paris. And
Mhm.
the other thing that I noticed was that at the time of her going through this tragedy, there was something else happening, a little thing called the American Civil War.
Yeah.
Granted, she was up in Boston, and the Civil War never got further than Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. There was one little failed attempt in Maryland, but everything really kind of was capped at Virginia for the
Yeah.
American Civil War. But the entire United States was affected by the Civil War. So she's going through a tremendous amount and being extremely sick. And then her husband's like, you know what? let's get on a ship and get out of here.
Yeah.
She starts the transformation and reinvents herself. And even when she, has all these great experiences and everything, and she loses her husband, that doesn't stop her. So,
Mhm.
what great evolution. What do you call them? The story points?
Yes, the beats of the story, they're all there. I know. She rises like a phoenix and then takes us all with her. Yeah, she took a lot of guff apparently for not really talking about the Civil War, and like it looked like she was avoiding it. But judging by how she is and her love of art, she's probably too sensitive about it. It probably affected her deeply. Again, I'm just guessing, but as a fellow artist, I'm gonna guess it's not that, yeah, she didn't feel it, it's that she felt it deeply. Um, but yeah, so there's no narratives, like I said, out there. So there's an opportunity
What fun. We need
for
all the
I know, for the type of woman like that that really was out of bounds and was a patron of the arts. I feel like she would have been friends with like Marlene Dietrich.
uh,
Or like Tallulah Bankhead, because she was in that era and in those areas, she just was,
her with Anna Wintour,
yeah.
the editor of Vogue. I mean, what she would be the belle of the Met Gala, Gala,
Mhm.
Gala.
Yeah. So for those of you that this is your first time watching this podcast, Noelle mentioned, the card. Um,
Hard.
the yeah, which one is it? She's the Four of Pentacles, and that is because we're using a book to
Ooh,
inspire our picks each week. It's Our Tarot by Sarah Shipman. We obviously go much deeper into research, but this is how we choose, is using her lovely deck, which we highly recommend purchasing because it's just so damn cool. And yeah, and with each woman pick comes a message. So share the message with us.
yeah, the inspiration in what I am learning as a great lover and nerd of history and knowledge, the women I am discovering through this is exciting, and thrilled to be creating this podcast with the most awesome Holly. So what the card for Isabella Stewart Gardner is the Four of Pentacles, which represents the things you possess and how you hold on to them. Isabella shared her wealth by sharing her collection with the world. On the other hand, her strict conditions are restrictive. Strict, restrictive. The key aspects: draw the card upright, acquisition of material goods, control, pragmatism, careful planning. Reversed, release, spontaneity, replacement. And then it closes with questions to ask yourself. What are you holding on to too tightly? What would happen if you let go and explored other options?
You'd end up with a bunch of artist friends who are gay.
And finally, how can you be open to sharing what's yours while also accepting others' ideas? Wow, there's a lot to write about there. So,
Hmm.
you know what? I'm going to run through those again real quickly because that just got my brain going. So, what are you holding on to too tightly? What would happen if you let go and explored other options? And how can you be open to sharing what's yours while also accepting others' ideas? Wow. Sounds like a therapy session waiting to happen.
Yes, but that'll be for another day. Instead, now we hope you've enjoyed learning about this
As much
kick-ass
as
lady,
I have enjoyed talking about it.
Isabella Stewart Gardner. Go do your research. We're going to do more research.
See you
Somebody
next
should write a movie about it or a series so we can all watch it. And
time.
yeah, over and out. How do we sign out? I forgot.
Oh, we sign out by saying, see you next week. Thanks for joining
See
us.
you next week. Thanks for joining us.